Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can. Great. All right. I'm Ashley, and I'm going to be your moderator tonight. So I'm just going to go over a couple ground rules. I don't know if anyone's done a focus group before, but first off, I'm going to start out with let's keep all our phones on silent if we can. And I think also like best practice is to just like keep yourself muted unless you're about to talk. Then go ahead and unmute yourself because we will be transcribing tonight's groups. So any kind of like crossover noise or talking over each other makes it so researchers can't get any quotes. So that being said, also would really appreciate it if you all just went one at a time. If we all kind of speak at once, I might jump in and try to facilitate like who goes first. Also would love it if you could speak up. That'll just help us get the recording, make sure we all can hear you. I know we all have different kind of like mic setups and stuff like that with different laptops. So hopefully that'll help us get through some of that. We also will be discussing a variety of topics tonight, variety of current events. Some of you may have heard of some of the things, others may have not. But please tell me if you haven't, because that's a finding in itself. Feel free to speak up about that. And also if you start to hear kind of the room maybe having one opinion and you might feel a little bit differently, we want to encourage you to speak up and tell us if you do disagree. Of course, please do so with respect. Just be kind to all your fellow participants. I'm also an independent moderator, so I don't really have a stake in the game. I just was given a list of questions and have some folks kind of like in the back room, so to say, who will be listening. So I might also like receive some questions, follow-up questions as we're going along in this. I believe that is it. Why don't we start by each of us having, let's go around, say your first name, where you're calling in from, and your favorite place to vacation. So I'm Ashley. I'm calling in from Connecticut, and my favorite place to vacation is definitely a beach somewhere, really anywhere. Next on my screen, at least, is another Ashley. So why don't we start with you?
Hi, my name is Ashley also. I am from Los Angeles, and my favorite place to vacation would probably be near a lake.
All right. And Brittany. I'm also going to put my last initial in here in case there's ever any confusion. So we have two Ashleys. So I'm an Ashley A. But Brittany, please go ahead.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany. I am from the Chicago area. And my favorite place to vacation is probably Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, just because it brings back so many good childhood memories. So I can feel kind of like a kid when I'm there with my family again.
That sounds lovely. I used to live in Chicago for a little bit, so heard plenty of stories of that lake. James? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Hi, my name is James. I'm in the Miami area. My favorite place to vacation is Orlando.
All right. I like the warm weather. Ryan?
Hello. My favorite place to vacation. I mean, I guess we haven't really been able to do that in the last 2 years, but I guess my next trip hopefully will be Europe, hopefully France. That'd be awesome to not wear a mask and be somewhere. So that's the crossing fingers.
Oh yeah, can't wait for my first trip overseas post-pandemic.
Yeah.
Danica, and let me know if I'm pronouncing it wrong, please.
You got it. I'm Danica, and I'm here from Helena, Montana. And my favorite place or favorite thing to do on vacation is raft the rivers here. Just a bunch of raft trips around here. So that's what I like to do.
Gary?
Hi, I'm Gary, and my favorite place of vacation, at least in this country, would be the exotic location of New York City. Oh, and I'm from Los Angeles, if I forgot to mention that. So I guess not much of a nature person.
I'm gonna say a real city person here. Nikki.
Hi, my name is Nikki. I'm from New Jersey. I haven't had vacation in a long time, but I always loved going down to Wildwood at the beach.
That's fun. Another beach person. Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie. I'm calling in from the Boston area, and I love to visit Asheville, North Carolina.
Ooh, I've heard good things about that place.
It's really
also on
fun.
it's on my list.
Yes, you should check it out. I can hear everyone. I don't know if anyone else is having videos or if it's issues or if it's just me, but I can hear everyone. But whenever you speak, I either can't see you, whoever spoke so far, or you're frozen. So I don't know. Just wanted to note that.
Is anyone else having that issue? I'm seeing everything okay. Okay.
Ugh, then it is just me.
We'll have tech follow up with you individually. So hopefully we can
Thank you.
we can solve that. You may
But you sound great.
they might have you restart or something, in which case just
Sure.
like jump back in. Whenever.
Thank you.
All right. So to get tonight started, I'm gonna do a quick exercise. If you all could just fill in the blank for me. I feel blank about the way things are going in the country these days. Feel free to jump in. I don't have to call on you or anything.
I feel exhausted about how things are going in this country.
Yeah, that's a good word. I would say I also feel uptight about the way things are going.
I feel unsure about how things are going.
I continue to feel concerned.
I feel a bit anxious about the way things are going.
I feel like it's the status quo. It's just amplified these days. We've always had the same problems, but just it's been multiplied by 100, it seems like.
All right. So these are, I'm seeing primarily like negative words: exhausted, uptight, unsure, concerned, anxious. Why is that? What is that? Is there anything specifically going on that's making you feel this way?
I would say obvious one is gas prices rising, but food prices as well, food shortages. I'm already noticing that. Not everywhere in my area, but a little bit. Like today, I went to Whole Foods and saw there was a whole bunch of items missing on the shelf. And then just sticking on trend here as I'm talking about rising costs of also like rental prices and housing, and just like it just seems like everything is going up and like there's no end in sight.
I'm frustrated because promises are made that are not followed through on all over the board.
What kind of promises?
Promises to address inequitable wealth distribution and runaway housing market, to name the two that come to mind immediately.
Who made those promises?
The politicians around me did. National figureheads have. I think it's been a Democratic talking point for a while, and yeah, things are getting worse over here on those fronts.
I said I feel concerned, and that applies to many different things. One is just COVID. I know things are seemingly going the right direction, but now I'm always concerned, when's it going to happen again? And are we truly prepared for the next disaster that could occur? I'm also concerned gun violence, especially everywhere, but in Chicago, just every day you hear tons of shootings, and it just doesn't seem like there's an end to them. And the healthcare system is just a mess. So it's definitely a work in progress. So much more needs to be done.
I said I felt unsure, mostly because of COVID. It seems like things are getting better, but then you hear that there's this new variant, and is everything going to start happening all over again? Like, I still wear my mask, but you just want it to be over, and if you don't know if it ever will be at this point.
Yeah, same with me. More anxious because I just had a baby like 5 months ago, and it's hard seeing the way things are going and nothing's improving. It's like, yeah, like you said, COVID is kind of slowing down, but it's also like when is it going to pick back up again? And it's kind of back and forth. And raising a child in this economy isn't it's not the best.
Mhm. If as a few of us mentioned, and specifically some of the promises politicians made. So I'd like to hear more about that. Is there, what are the most important issues that elected leaders should be working on right now, in your opinion?
I feel like just we're at a different time in like a media sense than we ever been with information and how it flows freely. And there needs to be like a new sense of like transparency with politicians and how they communicate to people, because this inference that of how we're kind of like the brouhaha of like, listen, we're gonna do it, we're gonna make it happen, and the other side is evil, and if they say anything that we disagree with, we hate them because we're gonna win. That kind of way of politics is very divisive, and I feel like with the way we communicate and how we all talk to each other, that's just not people. And there needs to be some type of new politician or way of doing politics that's more transparent, of just, there are bad things that are going to be happening with me in charge. Some if I go do this, this won't happen. If I do this, this won't happen. And not just everything's going to be great when I'm getting elected, because it's just not true.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many different areas that should be a priority. I definitely think more needs to be done to address like homelessness and like to combat hunger, help with mental health, which is not talked about as nearly as much as it should be, and just better prepared if COVID were to happen, and to address like reducing and preventing gun violence.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I can't believe we're still having mass shootings. It was yesterday or today on the news, heard about one. And how many years has it been since Columbine? And nothing has been done to really help the situation.
So moving on to some current events and things going on in the news, I would love to hear about anything that you all have been following in the past week or so.
Everything with Ukraine.
Mhm.
And then just recently, like with the Russian retreat in Kyiv, seeing all the war crimes that are being committed, like that's like been on my mind the last 24 hours, taking up my attention.
Yes, others have touched on definitely crime. I have to say, my local community is fairly safe, but I used to live in New York and I do like keep up with news stories, and I'm just seeing like a slew of articles that come out about like unprovoked attacks on these poor tourists that are just visiting. It's out of control. Like I used to ride the subway all the time, and you always had to be cautious and keep eyes around you, but it's just like I don't even know if I would feel comfortable doing that. At least right now, it doesn't seem like anything's being done. These people are just released like after, I don't know, I don't even know what happens to them. So that's something I'm keeping up with. Also, I was reading earlier, I think it was like an article with PBS about people coming together. I think it was from NPR maybe, and they were just discussing COVID funding. I'll see about that.
Something I've been kind of shocked by and following a bit is the fact that microplastics have been found in human blood for the first time. That was really alarming. Not surprising necessarily, but like it's already there. So that got my attention.
What about anything politically? Anything at your state level, in Congress? Anything we've been following there?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten a chance. One thing kind of that's concerning me about the country would be like kind of like the 2024 election.
Mhm.
I'm just concerned like a lot of bad things are like probably even before that, but that's one political thing that I think the country is like that's concerning to me about the country.
Sorry, did you say 2022 election or 2024?
2024 election, the presidential election.
I also have been seeing like just a lot of YouTube videos like being suggested to me for some reason, as well as like articles about kind of like Disney and how people are kind of up in arms about like their left-leaning policies that are coming out and boycotting and not renewing their season passes. It seems like a whole bunch of drama there in Disney World in, you know, Orlando, Florida.
Mhm. So there's also election coming up in November. How are we feeling about this upcoming election? Are we concerned about it at all? Are we kind of just pushing it away? We'll be fine. Will we vote? Like, any thoughts there?
I feel like in my state in Florida, I feel like DeSantis is going to win regardless. Like I'm not a fan, but I don't think it's going to really be a close election. I could be wrong about that, but that's just kind of where my head's at. Like, the state is kind of happy with him and how he handled COVID. A lot of people hate it, but I think like at least 60%. I just think he's going to win. So,
Does anyone feel differently or agree?
I was just gonna say I'm definitely going to vote, but I don't really even know like what's going on in the election yet, like who is even running in New Jersey or anything like that.
In Montana, we just after the last census have 2 members of the House of Representatives for the first time in like 30 years. And so we get another seat in the House. And so that's pretty big. But yeah, it just kind of feels like even there are projected shoo-ins for that are not very exciting, but things are going to get a lot more dramatic here in September, October.
The drama has already begun in Los Angeles. There's a big mayoral election coming up, and there's a really shady developer running, and he's just no good. Nationally, I am concerned because I think the next 2 years are not going to go the way I want them to go. Not that the first 2 have gone very well. But I am concerned, and I just feel like my anxiety levels will rise as we head over to November 2024. So I'm not optimistic at all about things locally, nationally.
All right. Well, we're going to come back to this topic a bit later. I just wanted to follow up on it since 2024 was brought up. So thought we could do a quick temperature check there. Otherwise, I would love to hear about some of the sources that you all have been following, thinking back to like this discussion on the stories you've been following this past week. Like, where do you usually go for your news in the morning? Or if you're not outright looking for it, like where do you end up finding information throughout your day?
I like using Google News because it allows me to look at multiple sources. I feel like it helps me get different like perspectives from reputable resources that I can count on. So I don't feel the need to go to tons of different ones to get the full story. But I also rely a lot on Facebook too, the news section, because it's just convenient. I'm there already. I follow a lot of different news sources on there, like ABC and NBC and CNN. So it just like helps to be able to quickly go through my news feed or go to the news section and access a lot of that information I'm interested in right there.
Yeah, I actually don't seek out a lot of news, similar to what Brittany was saying, like on Facebook. I'm also a member of a different local Facebook groups where issues in schools around here and just the community at large are brought up. So I'll often read articles from there. And then just, yeah, I guess that is Google News, whatever it is. I didn't know what it was called, but where when you're signed in, sort of like your news feed homepage landing area, like, is that Google News? Because I always read that every day. And Associated Press, I think, is one of the ones that I'm on the email subscription list for. So I'll get emails from them about, you know, latest headlines, a few others for that as well, but those are the main sources.
I'll
And
put on
Patch too,
oh,
actually. That's another good, I don't know if anyone reads that, but for like local news too. Crime up, you know, stats and things.
Yeah, I'll watch CNN, ABC News. If I want just something really local, it's called News 12 New Jersey. And then you just see things that pop up on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, we have News 12 in Connecticut for local.
I just want to mention, I do listen to, like, my primary source of news around here is public radio. That I have that playing most of the day. And since the programming here only has a few hours of music a day, it's a lot of news. And then local newspapers and periodicals that are still free of charge.
So you all have already mentioned Ukraine and Russia and hearing a bit about that. So I would like to touch on that some more of like, what have we been hearing? And is it an important issue to you right now?
To me, I actually have a friend in Russia, and she literally like risks her life every day to share stories because she could be arrested or worse because she does not support Putin. And it's so sad, even what's going on for the people in Russia. Like, her main source of income, she's an artist, was PayPal, and that's shut down now. And I've heard through her, she had friends in Ukraine. Thankfully, they all did get out. But I heard on the news this morning about this poor Ukrainian mother whose son was killed, and she had to carry him home and bury him in her backyard. And it's just like horrifying.
Yeah, do we really want to live through the Cold War again? I mean, I was only around for the tail end of it, but I've heard awful stories, and I just don't want a repeat of that. I want a free and sovereign Europe. Not a fan of dictators, authoritarianism. It's just a bad situation, and I just really tip my hat to the people of Ukraine for fighting back basically by themselves. Sure, a lot of countries have helped out with supplies, but they've been, I mean, they're beating up on the Russians, and I just never thought at the start of the war that we'd be here at this point in time.
For those of us who haven't spoken yet, are we on Ukraine? Are we just like no longer following what's going on there, or have we heard stuff?
I'm following. It may have changed in the last few days because I think it was like a little under a week ago, but I was reading from, I think, the New York Times and other sources were covering it. But the fact that the United States was, I think the number was 100,000, like the United States was willing to welcome up to 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. And then I was reading that like it's expected that a lot of them would want to stay in Europe since it's closer to home. So just kind of theories on that, I guess.
I know that this conflict is obviously very geopolitically important, but I'm frustrated just because, you know, Europe as a continent was really quick to open its doors to Ukrainian refugees, and the same was not done for refugees of other wars in the region. Doors were kept closed, resources weren't, it was a different level of, or an absence of panic that those other countries weren't afforded the same way that Ukraine has. And it doesn't mean that I am not here rooting for that, you know, for that country, but it is just frustrating to see that same level of support and concern wasn't given to other countries that needed it too.
Gee, I wonder why.
Well,
Yeah.
thinking about what Biden has been doing specifically, like what have we heard about what he's been doing?
Well, I was gonna say before, I didn't get to speak on the last question. What I'm kind of worried about with the Ukraine thing is that it's gonna escalate. Like, it's already horrible what's going on now, but it's kind of clear that, yeah, and going to your next question, that Biden has kind of said that we're not gonna do the no-fly zone. And with the no-fly zone is like kind of really important. And that's kind of like a very weak signal for us. So they're gonna take over Ukraine, it looks like. I mean, kind of like the media is saying that they're gonna relinquish in May, but I don't know, I feel like they've been wrong about a few things before, but I'm worried that it's gonna escalate. He's gonna expand past Ukraine and try and maybe conquer some of the Baltic countries. And you know, there could be a threat of nuclear warfare. I heard there was like a big projection, I think it was from a university or a bank, that there's like a 10% chance of nuclear war, which is pretty high. That was a few weeks ago, but that's kind of what I'm worried about.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest thing I feel like he's just been doing is meeting with like Ukraine refugees and just finding out just what they're going through, all the struggles, and showing the support by saying we stand with you. But I feel like definitely more needs to be done. You know, obviously I voted for Biden, but I wish we could step up even more to help everyone. And it's not just a statement of we stand with you, but what more can we do to actually make a huge difference for them?
What more would you like to be seen? What more would you like him to do?
Yeah, well, more like resources going toward them. There's just so many refugees, so many people that were separated from their families. So just seeing that, you know, beyond just like saying we support you, being able to provide them with the resources so that they are able to survive and gain as much happiness as possible in this extremely difficult time. So yeah, something of that sort.
I think Biden has obviously been very outspoken about Putin, about putting him on trial. You know, if the evidence is gathered there to do that, you know, basically he's pushing to put Putin on trial for war crimes. Like, that's the biggest thing I see right now.
Yeah, how would you characterize Biden's leadership during in handling Ukraine?
Oh, just in terms of that.
Mm-hmm.
Me or just anyone? I have to think about that a little.
Anyone.
Okay.
But you can answer as well.
Yeah.
I would say like I feel like it doesn't seem like he's really making any of the decisions. Like, he's kind of, I feel like there's a bunch of people like having their opinions and he's kind of picking which one he likes. As far as leadership in that sense, I don't really think it's coming from him.
Anyone else?
I really have no complaints. I mean, he's done as much as he possibly can dealing with a fellow nuclear superpower. I mean, you can't do a no-fly zone because that's World War III. He's been sending a lot of military equipment that the Ukrainians have been using to great success to repel the attack and drive the Russians back east. He literally called Putin a war criminal. The previous guy would do the opposite. So I'm very pleased with how he's conducted himself, given with the cards that he's been dealt.
And how would you here? Sorry, I was looking for this number because I noticed that we did talk about like spending. And I have here that Congress passed a $13.6 billion aid package for Ukraine earlier this month. So hearing that number, how do we feel like, what is our reaction to that? Is that enough? Do we need to do more? Where would we really like to see that money go within what's going to Ukraine?
I think about how the companies that are making those provisions possible are profiting.
I would appreciate more transparency as far as how exactly that money is being spent. Like, it sounds great, that's a high number, but like, tell me exactly how is it being used that I know that it really is helping who it should be helping.
Yeah, that's basically what I was thinking, that none of us could even get our heads around that amount of money. So it just would be nice to know like where that money is going, like what they're doing with that money.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Like, are they helping out using that money largely to help with the severe shortages that there are of food and drinking water and, helping the Ukrainians in that way? I mean, that would be an ideal scenario, obviously.
All right, I think I'm going to move on to our next topic. What have you all heard about something like, I'm not sure if anyone's been following it, but if you've read about it or heard about it, what have you been hearing about President Biden's Supreme Court nominee, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and her confirmation hearings in the Senate?
I watched a little bit of it. I saw some of the clips, and I thought she was treated really badly. They're treating her really badly. I heard like she's gonna narrowly get in. There was like one Republican that was gonna vote to confirm her, but the rest of them weren't. But yeah, I think she got treated badly, and they're trying to equate it to the Brett Kavanaugh thing, and I think there's nothing there. Like, I think what Brett Kavanaugh did was much worse. It's a completely unfair comparison, like apples and oranges. It's about it.
I think it's great she's there. She's extremely qualified. She's the only one who would be on the bench who has federal defense experience. But also considering the last two justices that were confirmed, it's like she'll be around for a while probably, but I don't know how much it'll be to actually tip the scales again more equitably in the court for the coming years. It's pretty alarming how it's sitting right now as far as social issues and human rights are concerned.
I'm seeing some reactions on your face, Nikki. So I'd love to hear any of the thoughts that might be going through your mind.
No, mostly I'm just I know of her, but that's about it. I haven't really seen anything about her, so I'm just listening and going, oh, okay, and just taking it in.
Okay. Are we surprised, for those of us who have been like following the hearings or read anything on it, are we surprised about how she is being treated in the hearings? Is any of it shocking or?
Not at all. It was to be expected.
Okay. How are the confirmation hearings making you feel about this country?
Embarrassed.
I think we have someone sharing their screen. Tech, could we fix that? Okay, I'm sorry about that. So has anyone heard of the fact that Roe v. Wade is supposed to be up for debate again this summer? Can I get a show of hands if you've heard about it? 1, 2, 3.
Just a little bit, but yeah.
6. Yeah. What is that unnerving to you? What is your reaction knowing that might be discussed this summer?
Yeah, I feel like if they're gonna like take away precedent, because the whole justice system is always founded on precedent. And if they're gonna start reversing laws like those like precedent that was in 73 or 72, that's like 50 years. Like there's no limit on what could happen. Like we can just change everything, and they're kind of trying to force it, like the one in Texas, like how they were gonna do in Texas, they were banning abortions at or yeah, 6 weeks. You could only get an abortion until 6 weeks. And that was bad.
Yeah, it's very unnerving. And I thought that same thing that James just said, like, you almost feel like, why is anything law if they can just eventually go, oh, never mind, we're gonna change this now. And I just think that Roe v. Wade it's very important.
Yeah, it's absolutely frightening. I don't understand. I don't know why it feels like we're going way back in time and for what. I mean, obviously religious beliefs are a large part of that, but I just think about what's going to happen. Like I think I was hearing a little bit of, I don't know, a friend or somebody was saying like, what is the future of abortion going to look like? Like basically with the underground sort of world about it, and like what that could look like if it's not a legal, safe procedure for a woman to go get.
Yeah, I think it's a death sentence for women to not have that access. And I imagine it's probably safe to say that it's really hypocritical, because I wonder how many of the people in Congress who are supporting its repeal have benefited from it in their own lives. And it has like very classist undertones to it, overtones, really.
How would we feel like knowing that Roe v. Wade is up for debate this summer? How would we feel knowing that Judge Jackson could be on the Supreme Court at that time?
It
I
doesn't
think
change.
better. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Just real quick. It doesn't change the fact that there's a 6-3 side to the Supreme Court. So we kind of know the voting history of those 6. So I just don't feel good about having Roe v. Wade come up for debate again, regardless of Justice Brown being on the bench or not.
All right, I'm gonna move on a bit to maybe talking about yourselves. How would you describe how people like you are doing economically in the country right now?
I'd say it's a struggle. I mean, I'm very fortunate that during COVID, I was able to keep my job and work remotely, but still it can be paycheck to paycheck. And there's always worry that at any point something can change, whether we see just gas prices skyrocketing. And that in itself takes a huge financial toll on all of us. Just you never know what's going to happen. So I always kind of feel on edge that I'm not going to be able to afford all these high expenses.
Yeah, for me, I'm one person, I'm single, I have no kids. I've always lived pretty simply. I've always been pretty good at that. So yes, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, rising costs are concerning, but I've also been able to save. Like Brittany, I've also been working from home. I'm self-employed, so I do set my own hours and everything. So I guess like, I don't know, maybe just being one person. I'm trying to think how others are, also like me. I think the biggest thing is being frugal, even though it's getting harder to do now. But
Yeah, I am a state employee here, and I think I've done everything right. I don't have any debt. I paid off my student loans early. I've been saving, and every time I think I'm ready to take the next step and purchase a home, because I've been renting for a long time, I'm priced out of the economy that benefits from my public service. if I had been trying with the resources I have now, maybe 10 years ago, I think it would have been possible, but it is just out of my grasp at this point, and I feel pretty dejected about that. Otherwise, I'm secure, I'm stable, I have a good place to live, but I'm having to redefine what it means to hit these landmarks of what financial security landmarks look like for me.
Yeah, definitely. Me and my boyfriend both lost our jobs when COVID hit, and thank God we were able to get unemployment because I know a lot of other people weren't. But we were able to save up from that, and then when I found out I was pregnant, it was kind of like, well, we're okay now, but how long is this money even gonna last us? Because then, I couldn't work anymore because I was considered a high risk pregnancy, and it was just my boyfriend, and we're very lucky that my mother-in-law owns her house right here. So as for like our living situation is good, but we still tend to live, check by check. And now that there's a baby in the mix, it's a little bit more tough. But yeah, like just had to kind of go minimalistic in a way, like just necessities.
Well, what would you say is the biggest barrier for you, for this is for everyone, in terms of like economic success?
Wages aren't high enough.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Cost of living just keeps getting higher and higher, and the wages don't seem to be catching up to it.
Mhm.
Totally, even with a degree, like, with the wages, like, no, this isn't equal for what I went to school for. So
I agree with the wages and even just like healthcare costs, like health insurance really weighs heavily on my wallet every month. So if you're especially like in the middle ground and you can't qualify for Medicaid or Medicare, it's hard to get that help that you need as far as paying for all those expenses. And with COVID, that was a worry too. Like if I get it, like how much am I going to end up having to pay to extra expenses? So that's definitely a barrier to getting where I need to be with all that I'm paying.
and one more thing I would just add real quick would be like competition, I think with like the housing market, but even with renting, like I know as I said, a freelancer, an artist and stuff on paper, I'm like, I remember a time when my sister and I were looking for an apartment and it was like, we would have to meet all these expectations and we could, but then there'd be somebody above us who, or like technically, who would look better on paper, maybe say they were a lawyer or something like that. So you go see a place and it would be gone. That was in New York, but it's similar up here in Massachusetts as well.
Ryan, how about you? I haven't heard from you in a minute.
What was the question again?
What is your biggest barrier, you would say, right now to economic success, since we've all been talking about kind of like increased cost of living?
For sure. I think it goes with like my lack of knowledge early in life with what credit was all about. And when I was in college, people were coming up to me left and right and was like, "Yo, you want $5,000?" Like, yes, I do. And I was just taking what I thought was free money, and now I'm working my credit back up to get it higher and higher and higher. But at the time, when you're 21, 22, you just hear free money, and I didn't have the education. And there wasn't really no classes that were put in front of me to say, hey, this is gonna be a really important part of your life in the future. And that's probably the biggest offset, was just getting back in track in that way. And then just thinking like, that's crazy to me how some of those important aspects of life, like credit, like paying your taxes, even things which I thought about the pandemic, taking vitamins, fish oil, these are not like part of our institution to give this information. We kind of have to figure it out. And now we have a lot more free way of information, YouTube, all that. But when I was 21, 22, I really thought it was free money, and it's still so stupid. But that's probably my biggest like hurdle right now that I've been working on for the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think about credit a lot just because my generation is constantly criticized for the wrong decisions that we're making to not enter into the housing market when the FICO credit score that our housing market currently relies on didn't even exist before 1989. And so a lot of the people lobbing those criticisms didn't have to contend with credit scores when it came to purchasing a home or getting loans at solid interest rates. That seems pretty disingenuous.
Going back a bit to the rise in the cost of living, I would love to hear why you think it's happening right now. What do you think is the cause?
Unfettered cap. I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right. For me, I think that a lot of this has to do with COVID. Just those lockdowns, like initially, even in March of 2020, and like a lot of companies just stopped production in the supply chain. So I think it has to do with COVID. And then me personally, I don't know, people would think that this is the level of conspiracy, but I think like it did leak from the lab in China. And so basically, I feel like they did it on purpose. China did it on purpose, like to retaliate to Trump for his trade war. And so I think that that's the reason that right now we're having inflation.
It's just a byproduct of unfettered capitalism. The repeal of regulations starting from the 80s, as Bush said to Reagan's face in the 1980 debate, voodoo economics. It just seems like everything's been going downhill since then. The lowered tax rate on the wealthiest Americans. Obviously, COVID had something to do with it. I mean, there's always going to be inflation after sharp stagnation, but we're just seeing like the end stages of this economic system.
Yeah, I think there's been a lack of regulation or on the highest earners in this country for a long time, and living here has been prohibitively expensive for a lot of people in this country for a long time. Privilege has been difficult to access institutionally for many, many, many people. And the fact that I'm noticing it now and I'm doing pretty well and I'm pretty privileged, like, means it's rampant, but it's been around for it's been expensive for a long time.
What has Biden and Democrats in Congress done to address the rising cost?
I know one thing that he did was the strategic oil reserve. He was releasing. We had stockpiles of oil, and he was releasing that. Like I don't remember the numbers. I think like 1 million barrels, like every month for like the next few months or something like that. So I know that's one thing.
And if we haven't heard much of what's going on, what would we like Biden and Democrats to do to help alleviate some of the cost of living?
Well, for me, it would be something that I think is in talks that he is going to do, which is like he has a plan to help make housing more affordable for every American. It's something. It's over $1 billion. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head the exact number, but it was high. It was like over 500 billion for sure. So that I just heard about a few days ago. I don't know anything more than just that fact alone, but really interested to see what is going to happen with that.
Personally, I would re-tier like what does it mean to be middle class in today's society, because I think to get certain services you have to be making like under 20,000, under 30,000 or something like that. And I have friends that have full families and their combined household income is like somewhere in the 50,000 range, but living in LA, they're pretty much living paycheck to paycheck, and they tell me certain services they can get because they have kids, but certain services they can't get due to income. And I think maybe a rebranding of what middle class is, and it's a lot, you can make 50,000 and still be low middle class. And possibly because there's a bunch of cool services you get for being in this country, and I think that's kind of forgotten about too a lot of times. But maybe a rebranding of just the tier system of if you make this amount of money, because things are so expensive, you fit a low income as opposed to middle class. So now you get more services or something like that.
Mhm. All right, I'm going to switch topics, kind of away from more current events to something that happened about a year ago. We're going to talk a bit about like January 6th, the storming of the Capitol, US Capitol building. So when you think of what happened leading up to January 6th, in terms of like planning and such, what would you say happened? Like, what do you picture? And this is leading up to January 6th.
I just feel like Trump was egging on his supporters, and he wouldn't accept the election. He never conceded. And what did he do? He give like signal to the Proud Boys, was it? And he incited this, and that's all. I just think it was down to him.
For 2 months, they said January 6th is going to be wild. And then it was wild and we're shocked.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, Trump himself saying election was stolen. Someone else just said it too. It was egging it on, stoking that fire, and this was the result, just like boiled over.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Trump is the huge culprit in what occurred. He was definitely encouraging supporters and doing nothing to stop them.
I honestly, as a Democrat, think it's a terrible strategy to continue talking about January 6th, because listen, the government, for the most part, a lot of it is very corrupt towards the common man, common people, common families. And if Biden really wanted to make his mark in this world, he'd be focusing about low-income families, housing market, homelessness, mental health, and really focusing on real issues that are going on with the American people right now. And it's so crazy to me that every day for the last, every January 6th, a guy that you guys banned from having freedom of speech, and I hate Trump, but everyone should be able to say what they want to say. But the fact that we don't focus on anything to do with homelessness, mental health, low-income housing, and building for people low income, we're so worried about this. I think it's a terrible strategy for Democrats to keep talking about January 6th. But that's just me.
I hear you on that, Ryan. We are gonna talk about January 6th for a little bit, but noted on the other topics that should be discussed. I just want to learn from you all. So we talked about some of the things leading up to January 6th. I want to, before I ask the next question, I want to see like show of hands. Would you consider like what happened on January 6th a crime? Yes. Oh, raise your hand if it's yes. Okay, that's everyone 50-50 with one. So everyone 0.5. Ryan, I'm putting you as 0.5 because the back and forth. What type of crime would you call it?
It was a terrorist attack on democracy, on our own
Treason.
country.
Terrorism, treason, anything else?
Sedition.
How many of us feel, I'm going to do show of hands between the three terms we just heard. How many of us would categorize it as terrorism? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4.5 or 4? So 5, we'll have 5. Okay. So about 5 of us. What about treason? 1, 2, 3. Someone was 3.5 or how about sedition? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now thinking specifically about like the Republican members of Congress, we've heard of a variety of things that some of them did leading up to it. Would you consider those members of Congress would you say that they committed a crime? Or what would they have had to have done in like participating in January 6th or leading up to it that would make you say like, yes, they committed one of these crimes that we just talked about?
Yeah, like Rudy Giuliani and Ted Cruz, they were riling people up. They were, I remember like Trump Jr., he said, to like on January 6th, he said something like, either today you could be a hero or a zero or something like that. So I think they really incited it, and they really incited it, you know.
For me, it's if they knew what was coming and did nothing to stop it.
Yeah, I think not only did they not stop it, incitement is exactly the word I would use. Yeah.
I think you definitely do not need to be there to commit the crime. You can just be in front of your computer and encouraging people to take part, or just not trying to take a stand towards violence.
So even the folks that just like encouraged people to show up to this riot, or what started as Trump's rally and what took it to the Capitol, even the people that were telling them and also like spreading the lies of the election, we would categorize those members of Congress as like criminals of whichever type that we just talked about.
Especially the ones that were giving tours of Congress a day or two before it happened to certain groups.
Yeah, they're given this powerful platform, and they're role models to some people that are going to listen to what they have to say. So they have to use it to their best, in a wiser way. And some of them just don't. They use it really irresponsibly.
What about, I know we talked, I have like a list of some like actions here, so maybe I'll just like go through it. You all can say yes or no for like, would you categorize this as a crime? Like they should be put on trial for a crime. So we already talked about like engaging in spreading lies of the election. We mentioned giving tours. Do other people feel like the members of Congress who gave tours to the people who are going to be at the Capitol the next day, did those members of Congress commit a crime? Yes.
Yeah. I don't know what the term is. I'm like, is that like something in the family of like accessory to a crime? Isn't that what's usually said?
Mhm.
There's like assisting. I don't know. It kind of has the feeling of that to me, which I'm not trying to downgrade it, because I still think that's obviously a criminal act.
Yeah,
No.
like they knew in advance that it was gonna happen the next day, and then the people that were gonna do it, they were like trying to familiarize them with the surroundings. Like how intentional is that? Like it's crazy to me that it's
Right, it's
taking
intentional.
long to get to this place. It looks like they're gonna get nobody. I've kind of just given up, like in terms of the January 6th. It's crazy how much they've done and how little they're just pinning it all on the small people. And it sucks.
So would we like to see like these members of Congress held responsible more so than the folks that like actually showed up at the Capitol that day?
Not even like accused of anything, like not even the smallest slap on the wrist yet. Like literally nothing. Like at least somebody, like a lot of people have done things that are past borderline. Like, so whoever did the worst hasn't even been accused of really anything. Those just some small leaders of like the Proud Boys and stuff like that. That's pretty substantial, but not to the height of the people giving tours and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it reached the Supreme Court. Like Clarence Thomas's wife was like, she was texting the chief of staff. I mean, and nothing is happening with that. And that's a non-political branch of government. So yeah.
We've got some questions on that. So I'm going to put a pin in. I have a couple more questions on this topic. So we're going to come back to that one. I also have on here, they're asking, would you consider this an attempted coup? Yeah. So I'm seeing some faces that are like, maybe, I don't know, would love to just like hear all your thoughts.
You could
Definitely.
definitely.
I don't have any other thoughts, but definitely I think it was a coup or an attempted coup.
Mhm. Ryan, I saw it on a little bit on your face. Was I wrong?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've already kind of said this. This can be the same thing with different words, but like to me, the White House and the whole area, the DC is like it's a corrupt area. I could care less about it. The terrorism that I see, I live in LA in Koreatown, is in the streets every day where I see homelessness, people on all types of drugs, and dealing with all types of issues that we just walk by them, and it's such a hard hit situation. You go to Skid Row in downtown LA, the amount of tents that you see, and just people, and you don't know if it's an education thing, you don't know if it's, they didn't have family, whatever it was. I see so much happening in the streets of my city that I feel like the government isn't properly addressing. That, yeah, whatever happened to you guys in some place I could care less about. It doesn't really matter to me, especially a year ago, when there's so much happening now. You guys won, and now you guys became president. Worry about the issues now. Like, to me, it's so weird to me that something that happened a year ago is like the everyday news cycle. Like, when there's so much happening in our country today, it just boggles my mind. That the true terrorism is what I see in the streets, and the hopelessness I see in people's faces sometimes when I walk by them, and all they have to their name is a tent. That's truly the war happening, not whatever a year ago.
I'm gonna go back now to, thank you for sharing that, Ryan. I'm gonna now go back to what Danica mentioned. I'll just do a quick show of hands, because if not, I have like a little info for everyone. Who heard of the Ginny Thomas texts to Mark Meadows, Trump's chief of staff, that were turned over as evidence? Four of us. Okay, so just to get us up to speed, I'll read this quick blurb. Ginny Thomas, who is the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, sent multiple texts to President Trump's chief of staff after the election, leading up to the January 6th riot, pushing Meadows to fight harder to overturn the results of the election and push the fraud narrative so that the left doesn't take over. Justice Thomas later attempted to use his role on the Supreme Court to keep these documents about his wife's role in the insurrection from being released. What is our reaction to that?
He should be held
And
accountable.
chime in if this left anything else off. If someone's like, I heard this too, you want to add to it.
I just feel that they can't be trusted, like to have to hide it, at least own up to what you did. And it was obvious that a role was played in inciting further violence by having those texts. And why do you feel the need to cover it up? Because obviously, you did something wrong that you had to hide.
And the proof is there. The texts, as you read, Ashley, right? Like, we have like proof of that and everything. So I don't know. I didn't know too much about it. I may have heard bits and pieces, and I don't want to say tunes it out, but just, I don't know what was going on in my life at that point. But I don't know. It sounds pretty clear cut. I have to look into it more though. Or I'm sure I'll be seeing stuff.
Nikki, I think I also accidentally cut you off. You're about to say
That's
something.
okay. I just said she should be held accountable.
Mhm. Ashley, I also saw some head nodding from you and haven't heard from you in a moment.
No, it's the same thing. Like, the reason why things keep being talked about is because they should be held accountable, and nothing's being done because they don't want to talk about it. And going back to what Ryan was saying, that yeah, there are things that are here now that need to be discussed and need to be talked about, and also, but it goes back to, that's why they're not being held accountable, is because people are like, okay, well, let's move on, it already happened. But the fact is that it happened, and something needs to be done about it, because then it's going to keep happening and it's going to be this cycle that's going to go on and on and on.
I know some of us said that Ginny Thomas should be held accountable. But what about Justice Thomas, since he's the one who's holding public office, and particularly public office that's supposed to be nonpartisan? You're not elected into it, as we just talked about in the Supreme Court. So how should Justice Thomas react to what happened?
I know.
I think he should be held accountable too. There are different rules of conduct at that level of governance.
In an ideal world where there is justice, he would resign and do the right thing, but he won't, and he won't be impeached because people just want to gloss it over and pretend it didn't happen, and nothing ever gets done. And I'm not expecting anything to change.
I heard there's they were talking about it on the news, that there was something like an investigation that he should recuse himself from, and he's not recusing himself from it. So yeah, I was in favor of him recusing himself from that, but I can't really remember the specifics.
I also want to go back to Danica. You said that he should be held accountable. What would you like to be seen done?
I mean, I think in the non-public sector, especially in positions of power that are not literally the highest in this entire country, that there is a level of, unfortunately, integrity and conscientiousness that needs to be shown by everyone who is in close proximity to that position, which includes immediate family. I mean, it's a reason why there was so much criticism about Donald Trump appointing his members of his immediate family and the collusion that is possible there. I think that the fact that this justice's wife and spouse was able to personally text message the chief of staff, the president's chief of staff, I don't know that it's a far leap to say that probably the pillow talk she's having with her justice husband has a great deal of influence on the way that he contributes to the way our country is governed. That is the most influential role that a person can play, like as a spouse. That's a cornerstone of Western society.
Last question in this section before I move on. I'm going to make this a scaled question on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is just not at all important. 10 is, this is extremely important. How important is this investigation for you to hold members of Congress who encouraged and supported January 6th accountable? See, I've got 10 to 10, 10. Okay, so we're close to the like very, very important with an outlier. Sorry, Ryan. What does that accountability look like for these members of Congress? What would you like to see happen?
Strip them of their power, prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. They need to be punished. They need to be made an example out of, so we never have this ugly episode happen again. I mean, we went 225 years without an incident like this. Well, there was a civil war, I digress, but nothing so blatant as January 6th. So I just don't want this to ever happen again.
All right. Okay, so now moving on and kind of back to one of the topics we did talk about a bit about is thinking about the upcoming midterm election in November. We're actually going to use the chat this time. If you open up the chat, And just make sure your box is set to like, it says 2, if the drop down, make sure it says to everyone in meeting. And I'd like for you to put an emoji in the box to tell me how you feel. If you could use an emoji to describe how you're feeling about the upcoming election, what would it be? And just type that emoji in the box and hit send. And let me know if anyone is having any trouble. Okay. I'm gonna expand this. Okay, so we've got some like slash faces, sad faces, mind exploding faces, sad faces, annoyed, and throwing up. Quite a variety, but all not great. I'd love to hear why we picked each of these.
I think Democrats have just been really ineffectual. And so I haven't seen much in the way of substantial institutional or social change happen. Ryan's been pointing to it. It's a huge concern that social resources are less accessible than they almost ever have been, and that resources are being stripped from there and being shoveled elsewhere. And so my expectations are just pretty low.
I feel like so far not enough has been talked about the upcoming election. I just feel like it's kind of overshadowed by a lot of other things going on. And I just kind of question whether they will really address what truly matters, those important issues that Ryan has talked a lot that I agree with. Like, I'm just kind of concerned that not enough positive change will be made, and we'll just kind of be at this, I don't know, plateau, like just staying in the same place and not moving forward.
I'm not ready to blame the party as a whole because there are 2 bozos by the name of Manchin and Sinema who really handcuffed the Build Back Better plan. They've handcuffed pretty much almost every meaningful social piece of legislation that's been proposed. And because they seem to be doing the bidding of the GOP is obviously going to say, look, they had 2 years to get something done. They didn't get anything done. They're going to win the House. They're going to win the Senate. And they're just going to continue with their rampant destruction until 2024. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I'm worried.
It's coming up. I can go, or James, go ahead.
No, you could go if you want.
Okay. I just think if I had to bet, I think a lot of us would probably bet that the Republican Party will be the winner, and then they're going to take back control of, I guess, if not one, then both houses of Congress. And, I don't know. I feel like either way it's losing. I kind of feel like Republicans will rebel. I guess I haven't talked about it yet, but I'm a Democratic actually in the elections. And so Republicans will be happy about that. I mean, but there's going to be a whole side of us that are not happy. And then I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I feel like it's coming up so quickly. That's what I was going to say. Like, it's 8 months from now. Is that correct? 7 months?
Yeah, I think like 7 or so. It's November.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like I don't know how it's going to go, but I just feel like it'll probably be a Republican win.
So, thinking of 2020, I hear a lot of people talking about their feelings back then was like a lot of fear, have to vote Trump out. People were driving their neighbors to elections, tweeting at everyone, putting on all this pressure to make sure like everyone was going to turn out to vote. But like, it sounds a bit like we aren't as motivated this year. And I'd like to hear why, or tell me if I'm wrong.
I think that was a lot of like, we need to vote Trump out. So that's where the motivation was coming. And now I know that Biden's approval rating is not very high, not as high as I would have thought, like when he took office. But I guess there's just not that same urgency of, oh my God, we got to get rid of this guy. Like, I guess for Democrats anyway, they're still either approving of Biden or feel hopeful that he is going to bring forth some changes since he is doing some good things that we've already talked about in this session. So yeah, I guess it's just that. And maybe we're also in a place where we have so many other things to worry about too as everyday Americans. I don't know if that's part of it too. We're just trying to make it through right now.
People on the left tend to get their feelings hurt when they don't get their own way. I mean, I'm from the left. I mean, I'm a straight up socialist, if anything, but people on the left do get fatigued when all these great candidates come around and they say they're going to do all these great things and then nothing happens. Then they just stay at home for the election. The one thing I can always give credit to the Republicans is they always come out to vote no matter what. They always vote straight down the ticket. There needs to be more motivation for people on the left to keep showing up to the polls, lest we have another situation like we did from 2016 on.
I also have that the majority of Republicans running for Congress this year, since it's a midterm, so a lot of the focus is Congress and gubernatorial, but a lot of them are running on platforms to kind of destroy everything that the Democrats have accomplished so far. And like even going as far back to some of President Obama's pillar policies like Obamacare and stuff like that. How does that impact your feelings about the upcoming election? Is any of it news to you? No.
I just don't have a lot of thoughts about the upcoming election because I'm embarrassed to say I really don't even know like who we're voting for. I guess because it's not a presidential election. And the only thing I've really seen is I see a lot of ads from Pennsylvania, and it's Dr. Oz, and now he's running for Congress. So I need to do my homework. I don't really know who's running or who we have to vote for in November.
I'd be more concerned about Republicans turning around or undoing what Democrats have done if Democrats have been doing more.
I think hearing that does motivate me to, I mean, I always vote, but it motivates me to vote a little bit more because I don't want to see the great progress that was done and that benefited so many people to be undone. Like that's really scary to think about, especially when it comes to like healthcare and how many people that helped gain access to it. And so hearing things like that makes me feel more of that urgency to do my part and vote.
What about I'm gonna do another show of hands. Has anyone heard about the insurrectionists who are running for office? Raise your hand if you've heard of it.
Sorry, did you say running for? I just want to make sure I heard it.
Yeah, running for office.
Oh, running for office.
I'm not surprised, but I haven't been paying attention to that.
So there's been, and I think in part because it's like such hyper local offices where, I mean, there's many running for Congress, but specifically the ones that kind of more so slip under the radar are these small offices that really just oversee elections and election results. They're elected officials for like elections and making sure your town's stuff runs smoothly. And they're running to kind of like right the wrongs in their eyes of 2020. How does hearing about this impact your thoughts on the next election?
Yeah, to me, that's really bad because I'm pretty worried that like there were certain people like Mike Pence and just other people that wouldn't let Trump do what he wanted to do. And I feel like he's slowly getting those people in. And he's like endorsing those people that support him and getting those people in. So I feel like in 2020, he has a chance of winning if he, because he's going to flip everything and make things like the inflation, he's going to make that look like it's Biden's fault. When I think it's his fault because of COVID. I guess it's debatable, but he could either win legitimately by lying and flipping things, or he could, if he loses, he's going to try and steal it. That's for sure. And I think he's going to be better equipped this time than next time. And that's, you know, there could be a constitutional crisis. That could be like civil war type of stuff. I'm done.
It's pretty alarming that that insurrectionists are running for election, but I vote in every single election I can, and I research candidates beforehand and try to get as much information of their backgrounds as I can. And even if I'm not totally satisfied with it, I can feel like I participated in whatever bastion of democracy is left. And so I'm hoping that, I mean, in Montana, I expect now to see some insurrectionist influence on local elections here, because there have been a lot of people here arrested who went and stormed the Capitol.
Mhm.
So the support is here.
If you
Yeah,
were,
I think like Danica's saying, it just makes me want to like research even more, do my homework more, make sure I know who I'm voting for. These days, it's so easy to find information, you know, so just have to sit down and do it.
yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. If like you found or were given a list of folks that like called out these people in your area that were running, that were at the Capitol, or the one sitting on QAnon telling people to go, what would you do with that list?
I
I
laugh
heard
at it.
about this actually,
Be a funny list.
because
Oh, that's it. That's all I gotta say.
yeah, I was just thinking, it just dawned on me that I did hear about that, because going back to what I said, those like local Facebook groups, my neighbors, some of them had received what I think you're talking about, Ashley, that flyer with insurrectionist names on it. I didn't remember till just now.
I think the great thing about America is that in this country, you're allowed to freely be a dummy. And, you know, and I'm allowed to recognize how stupid you are and to not follow you to over the bridge. And we shouldn't get rid of that. We shouldn't get rid of your right to make terrible decisions, but we should also promote education. And, you know, if someone wants to vote for someone who has some crazy ideas, let them, but we just have to hope that we've created a good enough society that we'll always be the majority. So if a couple people want to run and you know, say some silly stuff, cool, but you probably aren't logical. You probably have no deductive reasoning skills. You probably have a crazy temper, and hopefully the majority of people will see that and say, we majority of us don't want to vote for you. But that's just so great about this country, is that you can be a dummy and out loud and not be arrested and put, you know, and put away. So I welcome it. I welcome it, and for me personally, I laugh at it.
I think so often people, when they vote, they don't even know a lot of the names on the ballot. They don't know who these people are. So I appreciate when efforts made to, you know, call out those people and, you know, kind of just inform me, like, just watch out, because sometimes I see a name, but I might not have heard of the name before, but I'm like, well, you know, out of all these, this sounds cool, this name, because, you know, some of them I don't pay attention to. Of course, like, you know, for president, you pay attention to, but some of these other politicians, I don't know as much about them to make an informed decision. So I'm appreciative when people are and the information is presented right to me, so I don't have to really dig and find that information.
All right, I have one more concluding question before we conclude the group tonight. And that is there anything that we talked about so far that would make you want to vote or discourage you from voting in the midterm elections?
I always vote no matter what, so nothing changing here.
Yeah,
I was
I'm
thinking the
always
same
gonna
thing.
vote.
Even if it like just increased your urgency to vote?
No, I'm the same. I'm gonna vote regardless, and I always look up all the names and see who's running and what they stand for, so I know who I'm voting for.
I do think the one thing though, if like there was something that would influence me, like if I was on the fence that would push me over, it would be identifying and knowing who was an insurrectionist. That would definitely contribute to me voting in from an informed space.
All right. Well, thank you all for participating tonight and giving me all your thoughtful responses and being patient with each other and myself. I greatly appreciate it. And I hope you all have a good rest of your night. You'll be hearing from your recruiters with the cash incentive. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Ashley.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a
Bye-bye.
good
Bye,
evening,
everybody.
everyone.